Welcome to Modern Musings, conversations with the maiden, mother, and crone, where we look at ourselves and the world through the lens of the 21st century. Hi, and welcome back. I'm your hostess, Cindy Murray, and I'm here with my co-hosts, Amber Garvin and Kristen Hessler.
Hello.
And I said it right that time. Yay! And we are here today talking about gardening and yard work. And it's kind of funny because last week I was talking about herbology and different things like that. And it really kind of leads right into this because I'm really not much of a gardener. I kind of basically have a brown thumb. It's not quite black, but it's pretty brown. But I did used to, wow, my grammar's really good today, isn't it? I used to keep a little herbs growing, basil, rosemary, some mint, things like that. Because it's really nice to have those things, fresh to cook with. And I've also been known to plant a flower bed or two, but I mostly like the stuff that is plant it and forget it, which is why I do the rosemary and the mint and the basil too. So I thought it would be fun just to kind of talk about our yards and what we do for yard work and whether we garden. And when I'm using the term gardening, I'm using that term very loosely. That could refer to flowers or flower beds or herbs or just a windowsill. So there's a lot of different things. So what do you guys, do you do any gardening at all? Do you want to do gardening? Do you hate gardening?
Okay, so I like the idea of gardening.
I think a lot of people do. Yeah.
I like the idea of your own personal Eden, so to speak, like just plants everywhere. However, on a double-edged sword, I am allergic to bees. So it would have to be a specific type of non-bee related, bug related, which it would need to be like a specific type of thing because I definitely, and I've only ever been stung by a bee once in my life, and once was enough. It was one of the worst things ever, allergically wise. So So I like the idea of a garden, and my grandmother was all about her garden growing up. She had many different colors and kinds of roses when I was a kid, and then she had what she called a plant room where she had herbs and different medicinal type things. And I know we talked last week about the many uses for aloe vera, and my grandmother was all about that. She had a huge aloe vera plant that she cut and used and everything like that. So I do like the idea of a garden. And when my parents died, I wanted to keep and cultivate plants from each one of their funerals, and I tried for a while, but I'm just the worst at remembering to water plants.
Yeah, you're not alone in that.
I am the worst at that. I've had different kinds of succulents in my life that I've tried to keep up and maintain, and they don't die as easily as regular plants, so they're a lot easier for me. But every time I acquire a plant, I always end up killing it for some reason.
I can relate. I really can, but I do love having plants around. I like having house plants. I think they add beauty and life to the house.
Yeah, and it definitely changes the vibe as well.
It definitely changes the vibe. And they actually help clean the air as well. So I do like that. I like you, I have kept indoor plants alive for years and years and years. And then all of a sudden, I'll forget to water them. And the next thing I know, they're dead. And I'm really bad about forgetting to water, but I actually started putting it on my calendar. So I actually, it's on my day planner now to water, and that's how I remember. But I had a pineapple plant that I grew for years and years and years. And then one year we had an early freeze. It sat outside, and I would bring it in the garage in the winter to overwinter. And we had a cold snap, an early one, and it just killed it. And I was just so devastated. But I grew up with, like your grandmother had the roses and stuff. My mother's grandmother also grew a lot of flowers. She always had pretty flowers in her flower bed, and she had a greenhouse that she grew a lot of things. She had like hothouse tomatoes and things, and she liked to can foods. So she would always have, things that she grew that she canned or whatever. And I don't remember if my grandmother did, but my mother and my dad, that was one of the things my dad was really insistent on when they first had a piece of property that they owned and could have a garden. And we've had one sometimes in other houses too, but my dad loved having, fresh vegetables. And so they would always plant a garden, and, they would do the planting, but we had to do all the weeding and watering. So, yeah. So I kind of grew up gardening, not that I was all that good at it, but I do, like I said, I like to do stuff that I can forget about because I am so forgetful, I guess. So, I planted a rosemary bush one year. It took me 3 tries to get one to live. I grew it in it started out as one of those little Christmas trees. And I kept it in the house till it was warm enough to plant. And then, I kept forgetting to water it and it died. But I finally got one, and it wound up getting so overgrown we had to chop it down. So
I do like the idea of sustainability of growing your own vegetables.
I do like that too.
And I would be interested in trying that. I am about to move in with my fiance, Jason, and he has a huge yard. So that might be something that we want to think about. But he's not very good at keeping things alive either as far as plants are concerned.
Yeah.
Because his mom keeps giving him cutting flowers from her own flowers and is like, hey, go plant these at your house. And he'll do it, and then he'll water them or whatever for a while, and then they end up dying.
Yeah. I have a sprinkler system. That is one big help. I don't have to worry about the outdoor plants anymore. But I don't always go out and pull the weeds. So
I think there's a little bit of having the knowledge of what's coming up next and being a little bit prepared so that you can maintain that stuff easily. My trees in December, we had this weird frost, and so all the trees went all of a sudden with leaves, and it was I was really taken back. I was not prepared to rake leaves the week before Christmas. I don't have time for this, but it was they just dumped. And, that's also really detrimental to the ground and stuff if you don't take care of them.
It kills all your grass.
I found in all the years of living, probably in, I guess, the last 10 years that I've been living in a house versus apartment for the majority of those years, just being ahead of the game, if we're just talking about yard work in general,
right?
Being ready
for the change of season.
When when the grass already starts growing, because if you don't have your lawnmower ready to go and your other gardening tools ready and like time set aside on your calendar, your first growing of your grass, they will sprout up, and then you're gonna have all these crazy weeds in your yard, and then it gets out of control.
If you're gonna put a pre-emergent weed killer on there, then you need to put it out.
You
have to do it before it starts growing.
And I have wanted to grow, like you said, Amber, like, you know, just being able to grow your own food. I have been so intrigued with that, but I'm just never prepared. Every year it's like, oh, I want to plant seeds, but it's too late. Or I don't have the supplies that I need, you know, and it's really not, you can't just go out there and dump a bunch of seeds in the dirt. You know, like
you have
certain
to cultivate.
Seeds have
to cultivate the ground.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's a lot of things like
cultivate.
Yeah.
Cultivate.
Yeah.
So yeah, remember that year that I bought all of those cactus seeds and whatever, and I was going to plant all these cactuses and everything like that, and you know, that didn't turn out well at all. So
yeah, and you kind of have to know, like, if you're going to plant something, where to plant it too, because you could, you know, especially if you're trying to grow, like, say for instance, beans. Everyone remembers growing beans in school because they teach you how to soak them in the water for a little bit. Then they're ready to sprout, and then you pop them in the dirt, and then you have some bean vines. But if you don't give them something to climb on, they will not survive. They will only grow about 1.5 feet long, and then they start to die because they don't know where to go. So they
need to grow up on something and so they can get enough sun.
Right.
And
they need the right amount of sun. If you grow them in the shade, you know, that they won't grow to your expectation. Like, I'm sure a lot of things like sunflowers, you literally need to put them where they're in, like, you know, 90% sun or whatever. So it's kind of like you have to plan for it ahead of time, like way before it's time to pick your seeds out. You should have your beds ready, your dirt ready. Yeah. And everything. And that's why I haven't personally, like, gotten too deep in the gardening, just because I'm never ready for it.
Well, there's that, and then we've talked about it before too, and there is so much prep work, like you say, being ready for it, and then knowing that you have the time to do what you need to do to keep it, you know, through the season, through the growing season, because you have to go out daily and pull weeds and check to make sure it has enough water or whatever. And I mean, I remember that from being a kid and having, you know, my parents' garden. We went out every day in the summer and pulled all the weeds. So it's a lot of work. And I spent a lot more time outdoors than I have the time to spend outdoors right now.
Right. Yeah, and definitely lifestyle there.
That applied to my flowers too. You know, even when I had you know, a flower bed with flowers that I tended and things, there were times in my life where I had more time, just free time. And that was what I did with my free time, was to go outside and pull the weeds or whatever. Mm-hmm. And I don't necessarily always have that free time now. So I'm wondering, because, like, I really want to get back out there and do some things. And I've got a few things, like, if I were going to grow something and I just wanted to grow one thing, what would I grow? Because, like I said, my mint really hasn't taken off. Where I have it growing right now, it's not doing very well. So if I might want to grow some more mint somewhere else. And I haven't grown my basil in a long time because I don't really have the sunny part of the yard to grow it in. And we had to kill the rosemary because it just got enormous.
Oh my gosh, I loved the rosemary.
Oh, I did too.
And that was so nice having all that rosemary.
It was. And I loved having basil when I had fresh basil. We made a lot of just dishes with the basil in the salad, or like a caprese salad and things like that. And I would add it to all my Italian food. And we made a lot of pesto and things like that, because you can make that and freeze it. So I keep thinking I might grow some more of that, because that's one of those things you can either buy the plants or the seeds, and you can just keep it going, keep it going, keep it going. And, the more you clip off of it, the more it grows. So, which is what happened to the rosemary, because we kept clipping on it and it just kept doubling every time we clipped on it. But, I don't know. That would be my herbs that I would grow.
Say if you were looking at either herbs or fresh food wise,
fresh vegetables is another one too.
What is the one thing that you consume on a weekly or daily basis?
Yeah,
that's a good really point. Like you can't live without this one thing. Like you always have a staple. Like for me, I think probably green onions.
Oh yeah,
I would love to just have
chives,
those.
Just fresh chives. Yeah,
Or we consume a lot of carrots. Mm-hmm. Those, it would be nice. But then I also look at, those are two of like the cheapest foods you could buy at the grocery store too. What is something that costs a little bit more that would be more cost effective if you grew it versus buying it?
Avocado.
Oh yeah,
that would be like my dream. I don't know how hard
right climate, but oh my god, yeah! If I could just go outside and just pick
you can actually grow him in your house. Like I've been watching a lot of videos on growing avocados.
Here and you can move them in and out. And a friend of mine has a Meyer lemon tree that she moves in and out of her house, and that would be
lemons and limes would definitely be a consumable at our house.
Yes, and you can put them in those big pots on wheels, and move them out in the sun, in the summertime.
Garlic and ginger would be nice.
Garlic and ginger
garlic would be nice. Yeah. Onions,
any
garlic,
kind of onions,
jalapenos.
Tomatoes are a very popular one.
Jalapenos, yeah.
Or bell peppers. Bell peppers.
Oh yeah, we do eat a lot of bell peppers too.
And we've talked about growing and we've actually gone and bought the fresh green chilies, like Hatch green chilies, and roasted them and froze them. And you could grow those too. They wouldn't taste exactly the same as the Hatch because of the soil that they're grown in. Mm-hmm. They would be unique to whatever soil is here. But the Anaheim, the green chili peppers, those are always a big favorite with us. Yeah. There's just so many things though. And something that we consume a lot of, is like lettuce and spinach and things. And those are more like winter, cold weather vegetables.
Yeah.
So you can't grow them here in the summer because it's too hot. But they're a great thing to grow. And, you just pick leaves off of it as you go.
Yeah. Just take what you need and leave the plant. Yeah.
Brussels sprouts might be fun. Mm-hmm. And they're kind of fun to look at anyway because they're
right. I think having like pumpkins or watermelons would be fun to grow too.
Yeah, I've grown cantaloupes. I've grown pumpkins.
Yeah, you guys earlier she said she wasn't a gardener, but I seem to remember eating corn on the cob that she grew in our yard.
Yeah, I did.
When I was a kid, we used to have all kinds of food growing in our
on the outside of the fence. Yeah,
and marigolds, lots of marigolds.
My mom
got rid of the bugs.
Yeah,
my mom's favorite fruit was peaches, and she had peaches and apricots, and she had two peach trees, an apricot tree, and a plum tree, and that's what we always had fresh fruit in my house growing up because she really my mom really wasn't like a gardener, but she really took care of those trees, at least the apricot trees, until the year that Texas had a really bad, it was like in the 90s, had a really bad tornado come through, and
I remember that.
Uprooted her apricot tree that was her baby.
Yeah.
That's devastating.
Yeah, she fell to the ground crying because it uprooted her apricot tree.
Yeah, I've lived in a number of rent houses that had fruit trees of some sort. We had a mulberry tree in one house when I was a kid. We had an apricot tree in one house when I was a kid. Apple trees often. And And I say mulberry tree, not mulberry bush. It was a mulberry tree.
We had
It
a
was
mulberry
huge.
tree when Crystal and I lived in Plano together.
Oh, and they are so
and
delicious.
we couldn't figure out what the dog was eating all the time in the yard. And then it was because we had just moved, you know, and we hadn't been living there a few months, you know, and she was always out there like rooting around, and then she'd sit up and be like nom 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 nom, and she just looked so happy, and we were like, oh my gosh, she's eating the fruit. Yeah, she's always eating.
I would like a fig tree.
Oh, we had a fig tree when I was in high school.
Fresh figs.
We kept trying to get
one
the
of my
figs,
favorites.
But the birds always got to the figs before the people got to the figs. And we had pear trees at that house, and we never got to the pears because the squirrels always got to the pears first, looking for the seeds. So they eat them like the little cartoon animals, going ding, 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 you know, and spinning it around
the edge,
around it until they got to the middle. They would eat the seeds and throw the rest of the parts away.
And then the rabbits would eat the...
And the rabbits would eat the rest of the fruit. And that was the same house that had the fig tree. And... what else have we had? Oh, I had it when Kristen, before Kristen was born, I had a house that had grapes, little Concord grapes. And I went out there one day and I picked grapes all afternoon. And I made grape jelly, and it made 4 little jars. But it was good jelly.
See, one of my neighbors growing up had grapevines in her backyard. And I would go down the alleyway in my bike and just grab grapes.
Oh, yeah. They were hanging off the fence?
Yeah, they were hanging off the fence, yeah.
Yeah. I loved when I used to walk home from school. One of the people on like the road down had a pecan tree.
Oh, yeah.
And I would just stuff my pockets full of pecans, and then I would walk a few steps, step on a pecan, eat it. It took me forever to get home, but I did that like every day.
Well, we have a pecan tree here, and it's the paper shell pecans that you can crack really easy, but the squirrels get every single one of them every year. So,
Yeah, I know. When I was saying that, I was like, oh, you have a pecan tree, but that one would be very useful.
I have not.
A nut tree.
I have not had a single pecan off of that tree.
Yeah, if you can get the nuts, it would be very lucrative as well.
Yeah.
Because, like, there are a lot of pecan trees in Vernon growing up. The second house that we lived in, not the one with the fruit trees, we had pecan trees in the backyard, and my mom and I would always go and pick them and sell them.
Oh, yeah.
Or shell them and sell them.
Yeah. I had this rent house that I moved into for a little while. The people that lived there before were grow to eat gardeners, and their entire backyard was just little partitions of different things growing. And when I moved in, they abandoned, their garden because they had to move out of state. And it was just like, I didn't even know what was growing. But I didn't want to mow any of it down because I thought surely, some of this stuff will grow back. And the cilantro overtook the yard. Oh my gosh, it was a nightmare. Because it was like, I wonder what that herb is. It could be lettuce, or it could be, a weed, or it could be cilantro. And it was like all cilantro. And then it all...
went to seed, so then you had coriander.
Oh my God. And and I never went out there and grabbed any of those seeds.
Oh, yeah.
I know, I really should have, but there was all kinds of stuff growing. Like there was squashes and onions, just random, because it just went like, wild, because I wasn't out there like, kind of keeping it in order or anything. And when you were talking about peaches, there was a peach tree, but it was like a very young peach tree. Mm-hmm. And it only had like 2 or 3 peaches on it, and they were like really low hanging fruit. And my dog, I was watching this one peach. I was like, it's ready. It's almost ready. One more day. And then I'm sitting at my table, like working on my craft table, and my dog's like ready to come inside from the back door. And I look at him, and he's got my peach in his mouth, and he's wagging his tail. And I was like, you stole my peach.
I could see John Luke doing that.
Mad. And he knew he wasn't supposed to have it because he had that guilty wag. But that's also one of the reasons why I really haven't done much. Like the garden was like the entire backyard, and I had 2 dogs. And so there wasn't like a designated dog, bathroom area. It was a garden. And like the people who were actually, renting the house to us, they were like, oh, we'll tear up the garden so you can have a backyard. And I was like, no, I want the garden. But then the dogs,
didn't have anywhere to go. Yeah.
Because it wasn't raised beds. And that's when I decided I'm not eating any of this that grows, from this ground, because my dog's been using the ground to go to the bathroom just wherever. So I don't want to eat anything that has been growing there.
Even though the farmers fertilize with cow poop.
Yeah, but cows eat vegetables and, I don't know. It just seemed gross to me. And that's when I decided I wanted raised beds. And we're still renting right now. So I'm like, I don't want to build raised beds if, like I'm talking like, wooden or something.
Right, yeah.
Handmade.
Yeah. That's what I think beds. I would do as well.
So that dirt is like separated from everything else.
And then you're not having to bend over as far also. Because
that would be really nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that is definitely an issue from me gardening, is that bending over.
And, the older you get, the harder it is. Believe me. So that's one of my issues too, is that's why I don't go out anymore to pull the weeds and stuff, because I've got arthritis in my hands and I've got arthritis in my knees, and if I get down on the ground, I might not get back up again. So, so it's really hard to make myself want to do that.
One of the other reasons, I know we're kind of talking about like sustainable, having a garden for foods, but I also want like a nice yard that I can just sit in a chair and like enjoy. I have like this vision of sitting and having like tea outside. I don't know like where that idea comes from, but you were talking about how you wouldn't really want to deal with a garden because of the bees, Amber. But sunrooms are really cool. Yeah. I would love to have a sunroom. With lots of plants in a sunroom.
Talking about, like window gardening, because a lot of people do that. They'll grow the little pots of herbs in a window.
Yeah.
And it's a great way to have, a little bit of chives. Have some wheatgrass or something growing to put in your smoothies or whatever. Or, that's a really good way to do it. Is just like a little window garden.
Yeah. Well, and if I was going to build like my dream home, I would have a conservatory.
Oh yeah,
I love that whole idea of having like the glass.
Yeah, that would be amazing. Honestly, I don't know. This has kind of inspired me. Like I kind of want to plant something.
I know we do this to each other every week.
I know, and then we're just like,
there's so many things I want to do. I do want to go back to gardening. One of my favorite things when I was a kid, or high school or whatever, my mom always grew okra and cucumbers. So she would grow the cucumbers to make pickles. Of course, homemade pickles, there is nothing like them. And but even just picking a cucumber off the vine and a little salt and pepper and just eating that cucumber right there, there's no pesticides, there's no wax on the skin, there's nothing. It's just fresh vegetables, and she would grow okra and we would go pick the okra and slice it up and toss it with a little cornmeal and throw it in the skillet. And it was, it's heaven. It beats the stuff that you buy at the Dairy Queen or the fish market, the little fried fish place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's just
because it's all been frozen, and when you
it's battered with a different kind of batter.
Right.
And
when you freeze vegetables, they do it breaks the cells down.
Yeah.
And then when you can stuff, you're adding, sodium and other things.
Pectin.
Yeah. And then like you said, is there any food that you can get at the grocery store that doesn't have wax on it to make it look, I hate
I bought bell peppers,
organic stuff.
I bought bell peppers this week.
But I think they wax those too.
What?
Probably
wax the organic. Cucumbers.
They wax the cucumbers. I bought bell peppers at the grocery store this week, and they had oil on them. They oiled them.
They're very greasy.
They're really greasy.
I noticed
looking.
that. I was like, what the heck?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's to make them look good or if it's. Well, I think the wax is a preservative. It just keeps them from getting. Bruised in the transportation. And I'm sure the oil probably also, it makes them have less friction, so they don't break as easily, probably, or whatever. Protects the skin, maybe. I mean, you think about it. When your skin is dry, your skin breaks with just a gentlest touch.
Yeah.
If your skin is well
moisturized,
it does not. Maybe. I don't know. That's my theory. But it's still gross. And it used to be really easy to find that fit stuff to wash your vegetables in, but it's really hard to find that stuff now. And even I have some and I forget to use it. So, but anyway, that's neither here nor there. But yeah, I just like the idea of having that fresh stuff. And
it seems very grounding.
It is. It definitely is. It's a very meditative practice to go out and pull weeds. I mean, seriously, it is. Yeah. Because you're just there with your own thoughts, and that applies to food gardening or flower gardening or just pulling weeds
grass
in your
gardening. Yeah. Lawn care.
I used to go out and just sit in the yard and pick a little section every week and pull the weeds out of this whole section. And at one point in time, I had it where there were like no weeds in my grass at all. But, I just don't have time for that anymore. And I don't know if that is because I've just gotten so many more hobbies that interest me more. And I think it's due in part to the climate we live in here because it's really hot here.
It's so hard to maintain really anything in Texas unless you have that conservatory or that plant room.
Yeah.
It really is hard to...
Well, if it's 100 degrees for 30 or 40 or 50 days, nothing's going to live in that. So I can't stand to be out in that. So
yeah, the same plants that grow in the 30 or 100, 14 degrees weather also are not the same plants that survive, the 11 degree weather that we had in in December.
Right. And our weather here
just like
is
4 months later, it was like 100 degrees.
And the humidity here, the things that survive in 114 degree weather are usually arid plants, and we're not arid. We're pretty humid most of the time because we're,
the wrong kind of plants. Yeah.
So it just, this is a grassland prairie area. So, it's hard to make myself be outside and doing things out here too. So
yeah. And that's why my yard is usually like, I used to like to just hand water.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's something fun about just going out there with the water hose and just like watering stuff. But
it's even controlled. Out here,
out here, sometimes the mosquitoes are so bad that you can't even go out because the time that you want to water.
Oh my goodness.
Yes.
Is feeding time.
Right.
The last house that I lived on had this really amazing porch. And, there's only like a certain time of year that you can enjoy a good sit on the porch. And, the mosquitoes are so bad that even if you put citronella, wear mosquito covering, a mosquito net around your body, you're still going to get
find a way to
a
get
million mosquito bites all over.
And it's rough. It's hard here. I've always wanted to have the little porch to sit out on. And,
that's like the dream thing.
Yeah. I remember when you were doing a lot of research on Japanese gardening. Mm-hmm. And I was really hoping you would be able to find like the right look. You were really going for it in Lubbock. When we had our little side yard in Lubbock, it was like really coming out in its own way. You had the nice little patio and the sectioned off areas and the little pathway around the tree and stuff. But your yard here is so big.
Well, and it's just, it's too hot to spend the time out here. Mm-hmm. It really is. I can't make myself do it. But maybe someday, I don't know. Along those lines with the yard care, I used to be the one that mowed the yard. I did all that stuff. I took great joy in taking my little edger out and, going along the sidewalk and the driveway and cleaning out that little channel and making everything look really straight and use the weed eater around the telephone pole and around the fence and all that stuff. And I enjoyed that. But then we moved into this house, and this house is so big. And my husband, Mark, decided he would be the mower person. And he got our son out there with him, and that was their job every week to do. But it's such a big job because we have almost a half acre. and it literally takes a whole day to do the whole yard. And so we finally just hired somebody to do it, because it's just, a couple of 2 or 3 people can go through the yard and just do the whole thing in 20 minutes. And if my husband had to do it, it would take all day. So
yeah, that's me. Like when I go out and do the yard, it takes from sun up to sundown for me to mow the grass, clip the hedges, trim the edges, bag the leaves and the debris. Because I live in a rent house, so already the yard is like a wreck, because everyone that lives there doesn't, necessarily take care of. And I'll go like, ooh, look, there's a stump like of a tree that started to grow, and then they chopped it down like 15 times. I'm like, let me try to remove the stump. And then I'll like spend all day like sweating over trying to get this stump out of the yard or something, ridiculous. Like I'll find a paving stone out in the middle of the yard, and I'll be like, ooh, there's a paving stone. And I start digging it up, and then it's like, oh my gosh, I have to like take all the grass up, and it's a mess. Like I feel like it's always a bigger job than I thought it was going to be. And then I'm like exhausted, and the sun's going down, and I haven't put all the tools away. Oh, yeah. And then I'm like, I can't even move. Then all of a sudden, like you go for that last rest, and then you're like, oh, nope, my muscles are seized up. Yep. Yeah. From bending over. Those, oh my gosh.
Well, and I used to have one day a week. That was what I did that day of the week, was do my yard work every week on that same day, because the trash man came the next day, so I could have all my leaves raked up and everything bagged up and cleaned up for the weekend, and it would look nice on the weekend. And then, my schedule's changed, and so then it became, well, I don't want to do it on that day, and I can't do it on that day, and it changes. But I don't know. I still have this dream of having that little garden, maybe enough to grow, to have fun food in the summer, some nice salads or some fresh fruits and vegetables. And
I think the thing would be just to go ahead and plan it out, even though you're not going to do it right now, just to plan it and like design it and decide where it's going and what you're planting. Yeah. And that way when you are ready,
it's already,
you're ready.
You're ready to do it. Yeah.
Because I think that's kind of like what we want to do, because we want to wait until we have our own property that we own.
Right.
Before we do, because I feel like that a garden is an investment.
Yeah.
Because you invest your time and your money and supplies into it, and it would be silly to just up and move like halfway through.
Which what your previous landlords did.
Yeah. Oh gosh, thousands and thousands of dollars and hours of effort into what they did. I mean, they had probably 50 different food plants.
Oh yeah, they had all these little contraptions for the vines to climb on and everything. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was really
cool. So like, that would be fun to just make like a dream board, a garden dream board.
Well, and maybe that would satisfy you enough too, just dreaming it out. So,
and then maybe just like planting some things in pots. Like one of my neighbors, because we have clear fence, and they have a clear fence, so I can see into their yard a little bit. They have those big buckets, those wash buckets with the handles. And I'm sure they probably drilled holes in the bottom so the water drainage, and stuff. And they have all of their food, because they grow for food too. They have all of their food in those, and Rubbermaid tubs too, like lining the fence.
A lot of people grow, strawberries in pots, tomatoes in pots, peppers in pots. There's a lot of things like that you can grow in a pot and harvest, and just keep it right on your porch or whatever.
And then you could take it with you, or bring it in. I guess worst case scenario, put it in the garage or something if the weather got really bad. It's a thought.
Yeah. Chicks, you owe me a Coke.
Right.
All right.
I think I wouldn't mind having like a little lemon tree.
Oh, I know. I think I'd like the lemon tree.
Fun? You can make all kinds of things with the lemon tree.
I want to say they sell them at Lowe's.
Probably. Yeah. I would love a lemon
think
tree.
those go in. You can grow that in a pot too, right? Like
Yeah, that's what
really big pot.
Well, I
my
was
friend
thinking
has
of
hers in a pot.
something that I could keep in the house and that my cats probably wouldn't mess with.
Oh, I don't know. They might see those lemons and go pew 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 pew. Can't you see them?
Yeah.
I can see their little paws going batting at those lemons,
Climbing in it.
climbing in it. Yeah, I know
Probably.
cats. Cats
Probably, yeah.
All right. Well, I'd like to hear what you guys think. If anybody has any gardening tips or gardening plans or experiences, things that you've grown that you thought were a good idea, or a unique way to do it that for somebody who doesn't want to get out in the heat and do it. So we just come on and talk to us about it over either on the MMC chat group, which you can access on Facebook, or if depending on what method you're getting this podcast, some of the podcast providers let you comment on the podcast directly, or you can head on over to the blog, or you can send us an email from the website at modernmusings.net. And what are we talking about next week, Amber?
Well, next week we are talking about National Shakespeare Day.
Ooh.
So, and that is actually going to be on April 23rd. So our podcast is coming out a little bit before then. Mm-hmm. So next week we're going to talk about one of my favorite topics, Shakespeare.
Yay!
And how does that relate to gardening? A rose by any other name would smell as sweet.
Good one, Kristen. Good one.
That's good. All right. We'd like to give a shout out to Red Door Studios and Creative Audio Tech for our equipment and our theme music. And we hope that you'll be joining us next week, every Wednesday, new podcast. And don't forget to read that blog at modernmusings.net, because if you're only listening to the podcast, you're only getting half the story.
Yes.
Yep.
Oh, I almost said it. We'll be back next week.
Bye.